to our community members about the FSA. We have three incredible experts. One who spent many years at the school board and now represents us in Tallahassee. We are extremely happy to have her here with us today. But before I do that, I just want to bring some rules to the conversation, as we always do. We want to make sure that all of you are following the rules. We are going to have a couple of minutes at the end, maybe 10 to 15, for a Q&A. Our state representative, Bartleman, is catching a flight, so we appreciate that she jumped into this conversation on the spot. She's driving to the Tallahassee airport as we speak. But as always, she's always about the community. She's always about our parents and our students and our educators. So she's here to tell us a little bit about the bill that she just filed yesterday. At the legislation that she filed yesterday. I'm sorry, a bill that she filed yesterday related to the FSA testing. And then we're going to talk to a parent and also to two parents and advocates. Today I learned that Rosemarie Jensen, which is here with us, is an expert in a lot of topics, and she's well recognized in the community. I didn't know that, and my apologies. Before we start again, and we're already on Facebook, so if you have a Facebook page, we are already live. It's on my Facebook page, John Moreno-Escobar. You could send it to your friends, and I will share in a minute when we start listening from Representative Bartleman. Sorry. Always made a mistake with that, Robin. I do apologize. So the rules, again, we're going to have some time where you could either unmute yourself or put the question on the chat. Remember, this is a safe space. We all about respect. We all about understanding the position of each other. This is not a space where we are going to debate in a bad way. We just wanted to have a conversation with the community about what's happening. So I'm going to let the experts to drive the conversation, because I know a lot about the topic, but I don't want to take the space. I'm going to give the mic to our dear, incredible friend of mine, a mentor, our now state representative, Robin Bartleman. Welcome, Robin, and walk us through your bill and what this FSA testing means for our kids during COVID.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. This week, Senator Perry Thurston and I filed bills to take a pause on the school accountability system. As many of you know, I'm a former special education teacher, former assistant principal down in Liberty City. I was a parent. Well, I am a parent, always a parent. My kids are in college now. And I was a school board member for 16 years. So in a normal year, I am very familiar with the stress and the anxiety that students and families and teachers face with high stakes testing. This year has not been typical at all. Many of our, across all 67 counties, many schools started at different times, at different points in the year. Schools went from virtual to in-person, and many of our families have been suffering. They are facing food insecurity, they're facing housing insecurity, many of our students are dealing with mental health issues, many of our students have lost family members, some have even lost parents. So this year has not been typical at all. So what this bill is asking is for the state just to take a pause on high stakes testing. I have never been an advocate of high stakes testing, but in this year in particular, let's take a pause. Give the test to those who were there, but let's use the data differently. Usually the data is utilized for retention, for graduation, it's utilized for teacher performance pay, it's utilized to grade a school. That shouldn't be happening this year. This is not a typical year. So give the test, and then let's use the data to drive instruction and decide where we're going to put our resources. Many of our students have regressed. It's a huge issue out there. Many students did not do well in the virtual learning environment. If they're in school, it's even difficult. So we need to recognize what's going on. We need to recognize what's going on with our teachers. And to create a high stakes testing situation that's used in a punitive manner is unfair to everyone. So it's just saying, let's give this year a break from all the high stakes but let's now take the data and use it to remediate those students who are in need. And more importantly, we should want to look at data. So we need to pump more resources into the school system. Children have lost a whole academic year now. It's been very atypical. I know teachers who go out for 14 days quarantine, students who go out for 14 days quarantine, students who've gotten COVID. It's just, it's very unfair to use the school accountability system in this manner this school year. So I'm hoping we're going to get support. I'm hoping that everyone out there is going to contact the representative. Broward County urged them to co-sponsor my bill. And I know I'm working with the Florida PTA. I've contacted the Florida School Board Association, FEA, the Teachers Union. This is just common sense. This is just a common sense measure. So I'm hoping it's going to gain momentum and support. And honestly, it's within the purview of the governor and the commissioner of education to do this now. And they haven't. So if this even starts the conversation, or, so we can start talking about this, I mean, I will be happy if they write an executive order tomorrow and do what I'm asking them to do. I'll be just fine with that. But we need to do something. Our teachers and students and families need relief. And it's unfortunate that they're putting this undue stress on everyone. And not only that, how valid will the test be with everything the children are going through? Are those test scores even going to be valid?
Right. So, State Representative, thank you so much, and thank you for filing this bill, which definitely will send a message and make a statement to the governor and the Department of Education. Some people in the chat are asking what's the number of the bill and when they could review the information of the bill. Even though we will put it up in a minute, what is the number of the bill in the state and in the representatives chamber?
House Bill 359. So just go to my Florida House, put in 359, and you'll see the language.
And one last question is, we've been hearing parents in the community that, and maybe you know this because you worked in the past as a school board member, representing many of us. What was the process? So for parents to understand, they're new to the process, they have their kids are in third grade now, or parents that have kids in 10th grade now that don't know the process. What is usually the regular process for testing in Broward County Public Schools?
Sorry, I'm getting the questions are popping up on my screen. In third grade especially, what happens is you take the FSA. Along that time frame, your simultaneous teachers especially have difficulty on the FSA, and that's the way to, and then they determine if you didn't pass the FSA, they look at your portfolio assessment to determine whether or not you're retained. And I need to also say this because I was asked this question today, well, are you just gonna keep moving kids? No, this is not about moving kids. These test scores, the governor had every school district identify students who are in need, write letters to those parents, create a plan, an academic plan for those students. To me, that's more valid than an FSA. And at that point, this local school district can determine whether or not the student has regressed so much that they need to be retained based on their multiple points of data, as opposed to one high stakes test. So that's kind of what we're asking for, just some common sense measures to help these families.
And have you heard, Representative, about any plans from Broward County Public Schools or other school districts in the state about the implications of bringing students on campus to take the test? Some of the parents.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
I've gotten phone calls like, I've kept my kid home this whole time, and now you want me to have my kid come in and take the test. Just imagine being 8 years old, you haven't been in school all year, and now your parents dropping you off with a teacher you haven't met, and you're going to take a high stakes test. And you may have a pre-existing condition. So as the parent of the child, I would be so worried. I mean, it's just, I don't think they've thought this through. I think the kids, I really believe, I believe in home rule. Let me just put that out there. I think school districts will hopefully do what's best for the kids. And if they're kids that are already there, then they can take the test. They've been giving iReady in Broward County Public Schools already to monitor student progression with reading. So there are multiple things we can do. And this is an important thing. I'm not saying you just pass everyone along. That's not what you do. What we need to do is look at the data, see how many kids we're talking about, see how far they've regressed. And then we need to, I know the governor's budget puts more money into education. We really need to look at providing additional resources, whether that's extending the school day, whether it's reading camps on a Saturday, whether it's reading camps over the summer. I mean, our children have lost a year of their lives and with this pandemic. Not only is it the academic loss, it's what's happening to them socially and emotionally. That many children are dealing with mental health situations. And so if at any point in time we should be looking at the whole child, it's now. That's always been my mantra. Focus on the whole child, not a test score. We are in the middle of a pandemic and people are, family members and friends are dying. Parents are losing their jobs. I've worked lines, where food distribution lines, and I've seen kids in the cars with their parents to get food because they don't have food. This is when we really need to just focus on the whole child, get them the services they need, and use the data to spend our money wisely and invest in kids and their academic progress.
And Representative, the last question I have, it's in terms of funding. It's any possibility, or there is a myth that we are hearing that any school district, in particular our school district, would lose money based on kids not taking the test.
I have not heard that. I mean, I'm not sure where that came from. What I am concerned about is holding schools harmless because of the loss of attendance next year. What I am concerned about is if we're going to go ahead and continue to provide asynchronous learning, that FTE were held harmless for the virtual FTE. So those are things. I have not heard that, but let me look into that. This is the first I'm hearing of that.
Yeah, and Representative, any other way that people could get in touch with you? We will put your information, but any other input that you want to bring up to this conversation in terms of the FSA and what's happening right now?
I need the parents to look. I've seen parents mobilize in the state. When the Save Our Summers group, I remember when they single-handedly changed the start of school. And when parents get together and rally for their children, legislature and the governor will listen. This is not debating. We can debate high stakes testing and whether it's a good thing or bad thing all day because everyone has different views. This is just something that is common sense and is the right thing to do by our schools, by our administrators, by our teachers, by our parents, and by our students. I mean, to have a high stakes accountability system used punitively this is not the time for that. So I think it's something that we can get bipartisan support on, that everyone can rally around. And our families are going through a lot, and there's a lot of trauma out there, and just the interruptions in instruction and what our kids are going through mentally. The tests aren't even going to be valid, in my opinion.
Well, Representative Bartleman, I know you have to catch a flight. I know you're going to maybe stay for a little bit just to listen. We appreciate your time.
I have one more.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm on. You got me? I was going to say the bill has been placed on the Pandemic and Public Emergencies Committee. So you can go to the House website and ask the members to contact the committee members and say, please do this for us. It's really important. Also,
which committee again?
It's I want to make sure I use the Pandemic and Public Emergencies Committee.
Okay.
Also, I want everyone to know that my website, my email address is robin.bartleman@myfloridahouse.com. And most of Broward County already knows my phone number, 954-668-3662. I want to thank all the teachers and ESPs and everyone on this call. Every day you're on the front lines. We have been advocating for you to get the shot. You are frontline workers, and in my opinion, and I just want to thank you for being there for our students. And to all the parents and everyone on here, thank you for advocating. I really appreciate it.
No, thank
and
you.
I'll listen as I walk into the airport, and I'll be here for questions.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Representative. And thank you for always being attentive to the call from when you were at the school board and now. We appreciate it. I already put your cell phone there, your website on the Florida House of Representatives website. So whoever wants to reach out to Representative Bartleman, you could actually do it. We will be sharing in a minute as we speak, as we listen to the other two speakers about the committee. We will share the link so you guys could go to that website and also look for the representatives and senators that are part of that committee. So you can reach out to them, and hopefully we will also make sure that after this meeting, we send an email out to all of you with the information of those representatives, with their phone numbers and their social media tags and their emails, so you could contact them to help the representative and the senator to really push this bill forward. But hopefully we don't have to use the bill and the process, and maybe the governor and the Department of Education move faster than what they've been doing right now.
John, one more thing.
Yes.
If you know people who live in other parts of the states, if you have relatives and you have friends, it's really important, because we're all in Broward County, and I suspect that the majority, if not all of the delegation is going to be behind us, but it's those representatives in Miami-Dade County, those representatives in other parts of the state that need to hear from their constituents. So call your friends in Miami, call your friends in Tampa and Orlando. We're all in the same boat, so we need to have a groundswell across the state.
Thank you, Representative. Okay. So that was great. We have a representative here who just filed this bill around the issue that we're discussing tonight. We of course know that this test at this point in time will hurt our students, will hurt our teachers, and will hurt the school districts and the schools that our kids attend. So it's really important that we take action, and that's what we are going to hear now. We're going to hear from a parent, Ms. Lindsay Poveromo-Joly. I always make a mistake with this. Lindsay, you will introduce yourself.
You got it. You got it.
Joly, which is going to talk to us about her own experience. Many of you know her because she's really famous here in Broward. Her son is like extremely talented, and she's been in online learning since it started. As a parent, my son also has been in online learning since it started. And I wanted to make sure that we bring a parent to talk to other parents that just starting with this process and really don't understand how they could deal with either taking the test, or as Ms. Lindsay did, not taking the test, and how that process went through. After we finish with Lindsay, we will listen from Ms. Jensen, Rosemarie, about the opt-out option and what are the implications and who should be looking into it, because it's not just one size fits all. There will be parents that will be okay taking their kids to schools and taking the test. The other parents that will not. If you're not that parent, you should hear both sides of the story. So we want to make sure that you have that opportunity tonight. But also we want to hear from a parent. So the floor is yours, Lindsay, and tell us, how was your experience, why you decided to do this, and what is your recommendation to other parents?
Well, my son, my oldest, he is in 3rd grade this year. So this was our first experience as parents dealing with the standardized testing. Like Ms. Bartleman said, there is no right or wrong definitive answer here regarding standardized testing. Obviously, we didn't foresee the pandemic happening, but it is here. And both my kids, the youngest is an ESE pre-K student with Broward County. They've both been strictly e-learning since this began. We are a high-risk family. My husband has been working from home. We haven't so much as gone to a grocery store since this began. So it didn't really make sense to me from a health perspective. That was the main point that I was looking at this with, is that from a health perspective, I didn't understand how I was supposed to take my son, who has not seen family, who has not seen friends, who had not been to a grocery store, and just drop him off, even though he is familiar with his school, just drop him off to take a test. It seemed like a health issue for me. So that's where I was addressing it from. It was pretty overwhelming when you look at, you hear that these tests are mandatory and you have to take them. And I wasn't sure what would happen. Was I going to have to pull him out of school and homeschool him? You kind of don't know what you're up against, because all you hear about is that it's mandatory. In actuality, there are some opt-out groups, which I know Ms. Jensen will be discussing later. And the process itself was fairly simple. I know that depends on your school administration and how that works. But I think the main thing that you can do is send a letter to your principal, and you don't ask for permission to opt out. You just kind of let them know that your kid is not going to be taking the FSA. And I did go into detail, and I said it was from a health standpoint. We haven't gone anywhere. We are a high-risk family. My husband is medically fragile, and it doesn't make sense to send my kid to school for the test. So I sent the letter to the principal. She let me know that that's okay. She got it. And that was really the extent of the process. So I know he's still going to be preparing for the test with his class virtually. I get that, but he won't be going to take the test. Still not sure exactly what's going to happen on the days they do take the test, if he just doesn't go to school that day, or if he logs something else virtually. I'm waiting for more direction as that time comes closer. But there is a lot of information out there that you can make the best choice for your family during this time.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Lindsay. And Lindsay has been since our first meeting, since we created this group. She's active in social media. She is an incredible parent. And as I mentioned to everyone before, she has an incredible son. So if you want to really catch some pictures of what he does and the things that he gets involved, it's pretty cool to have those stories on social media. But this is my son is in kindergarten, so I don't have that issue, but I feel the pain of what the representative and you were mentioning, which is that fear of going into a school if you have a pre-existing condition as a parent. Have that fear if you don't feel comfortable taking your son to a school yet. And we haven't heard from the school board here at Broward County what is going to be the measures that they will be taking in place in order to make that maybe more flexible or not to certain parents in certain communities, especially our Latino and African American communities who have been extremely hit by COVID. We want to make sure that they are feeling comfortable to go to the schools, something that we haven't heard yet. I know because I was in a meeting with the chief academic officer, Dan Gold, that they were getting some directions as we speak about where this is going to go in April. So we should be hearing from them soon, and hopefully not the day before the test, hopefully not the night before the test, but with enough time to bring the information to the parents and community in a timely manner so people could accommodate. If you could skip the test and you have the option, we're going to hear from that in a second, then you have that option, and we want to educate you tonight about that. But if you don't and you don't know what to do, then you could connect with community members that are here, like Lindsay, and could walk you through the process. Look, this is what I did with my principal. You might have to talk to your principal. You might have to talk to your teacher because you don't feel comfortable going back to the school. You wanted to mention something, Lindsay?
There are a lot of templates online. If you look for, opt out of the FSA testing, there are templates online. If you're not sure where to start, that will kind of help you write your letter. For me, I thought honesty was the best policy, so I did edit mine again to say that, it was for a health reason. My son, he has straight A's. He is in the high achieving program. They have been doing iReady. He has been making great progress. So it just didn't really seem like that urgent in the middle of a pandemic that I should send him and compromise, the health of his family for the test. But there are templates out there and there are groups out there. So if you're overwhelmed, because I know it's overwhelming, there will be people that can help you along.
Right. And now we're going to talk about that. And before I move into Ms. Jensen, who has been patiently waiting, so thank you so much. We have a comment on the chat that says, another option is portfolio assessment. Set what your child is doing, copies, photos, whatever, and can be graded with fidelity. So yes, make sure that you keep in your different work from your kids, and so you can make a case. Again, there is a lot of information in the chat that I will be reading as we go. But now let me introduce you to another parent, a retired teacher. I'm sorry, another parent. I was thinking about Jody. Another parent and an advocate for her community, a person that until today I didn't know that she was extremely involved in this movement and brings a lot of experience and a lot of information to our community. Ms. Jensen, welcome and talk to us about the different alternatives our community and parents have and how you got involved in this and what are the recommendations you bring to the table.
Okay, you can hear me? Just me.
Yes.
Okay, so I am a retired teacher. I taught
You
K1.
go. I wasn't that wrong.
Yes, I taught for 12 years. I did teach in Broward County and Alachua County. And I left when I had my children. I've been involved in the opt-out movement since 2011. We were a national group. I've been to DC 4 times. I held an opt-out conference here in 2013. We were really steamrolling. For me, the reason to opt out is not just, again, everybody has their thing, but for me as a teacher and then as a parent coming into the 2000s, I could see where they were going to take these tests. And in the beginning, it was supposed to be just to assess where kids are. And then it became, and I kept saying they're going to use these as a hammer to destroy public education. And that's exactly what's happened. Then it became grading schools by these test scores, grading teachers by these test scores, and ultimately hurting children in the process because your curriculum is very narrowed by what's tested. And honestly, given the tests are given in April and no one sees them, they don't guide anybody's instruction. Just saying. What guides your instruction as a teacher is what goes on in your classroom, the tests that you create, the assessments you give, the work that the children do in front of you. So for me, it's always been about denying denying them the data and protecting our schools, because ultimately it's been used to hurt our schools. It's been used to close schools. It's been used to retain children. And as it turns out, my first daughter, my first child was gifted, didn't have problems, but my son did have a learning disability. And we came up against the 3rd grade retention. And that's kind of when I saw the damaging effects of these tests on a kid. So he did great in school. He was not a good test taker. His processing speed was slow, so he couldn't finish. He wasn't given his accommodations, and yes, he was going to be retained. And no matter what I said at the time, this is years ago, and all these people knew me, like I taught with these people. So I really came up against this brick wall of saying, well, yeah, he's great in class, but he can't pass the test, so we're going to retain him. So I kind of did an end around and I pulled him out of school and I put him in a private school for a year. In the grade he was supposed to be in, and then I brought him back to public school for 5th grade, and he never took a test again. And that's kind of how all this started for me. So if you are someone who, to me, this is the year. If you really have always wanted to not have your child to take these tests, this would be your year, because I think, it's all of this is silly to be assessing these kids this year when, instruction has been uneven. Kids have been dealing with, maybe sickness in their family, or parents losing jobs, or food insecurity, or all the stuff that's going on, or just the tension that has arisen in most homes around this pandemic, not seeing friends, not seeing loved ones, for many. So I think kids' learning has been very uneven. So to assess that with these tests is actually, to me, criminal and abusive, to the children, to the teachers, to the schools. I don't have a lot of faith in the state. I know Richard Corcoran quite well. He is not a fan of public schools. And so this is a good year for disaster capitalism to come in and really hammer how poorly schools are doing by giving these tests. When in fact, I think teachers are doing a valiant job with an incredibly difficult, crazy situation that none of us anticipated. And of all the things that I would have anticipated, this would not be one of them. So this would be your year. I think, certainly if you've kept your kids home, why would you ever send them in? I just think that's absolutely absurd. I will tell you, there are districts in the state that are kind of saying things to parents like, we would not force you to bring your kids in. I just saw a letter from another county, from Orange County, where they said, we're going to respect the choices parents make and not force kids to come in. And so they will look at things like good cause exemptions to promote children. So there's that. Again, if you join our Facebook group, Opt Out Broward, or Opt Out Orlando, or Opt Out third grade, any of those, there are pin posts at the top that give you copies of letters that you can copy, edit, to let your school know you're opting out. It'll talk about what to request from the school. You can request a portfolio, and make sure that when you do that, you know that they're going to come back with you and say things like, oh, we've been doing a portfolio, we've been doing these iReady assessments, or these mini FSA assessments. I can't think what they're called now because I've been out of it for a while. But by the way, both my kids are graduated. One graduated UCLA, and my son, who they would have failed, is at University of Arizona on a scholarship. So, don't even go there with me. They could have destroyed a kid's whole future if I would have, let them. But there are, so they'll say that, oh, we do these mini assessments too, but they're just more of the same. They're literally little mini standardized tests. And if they pass so many of them, they can say they can move on. That's not a portfolio. A portfolio is a collection of your child's work. And that's what they need to be collecting. And if they're not collecting it, you collect it. Save everything. I saved everything. In fact, I'm going through 20 years of it now. Save everything, because then you have your proof that your child has progressed or whatever. I kind of don't support this whole thing that everybody's regressing or has lost learning. So a lot of things kids are learning within this pandemic that are going to serve them well if in the future. And maybe they're learning better because they're not so focused on, passing the test, skill and drill. So, that's a whole nother subject to get into, but this is the year I think parents in Florida can really make a difference and really have a loud voice in Tallahassee. I will tell you, it's an uphill battle. This is not a pro public education administration. And certainly our Secretary of Ed is not supportive, but don't discourage you. I'm still on the phone every day and writing letters and doing what I can. So if you have any questions, I certainly can help you. Just remember at the end of the day, it's your child. I guess if, that's what I learned early on, and I used to tell parents that when I was a teacher, hey, it's your kid, but when it's really your kid and they're trying to come at you with some things that are going to be detrimental, you have to advocate for your child. So, that's, again, Opt Out Broward, that I answer questions there. We post things there all the time. The 2019 guide is no different. It's the same. We try to update it every year, but of course last year we were all a little bit crazy and nothing's changed. So There you go. So whatever you need, you can find me there. And there's a ton of us who have been doing this for years and helping other parents. So there's always someone who will jump in and answer your question. So
beautiful. And then, so we have a lot of comments here on the chat, but the biggest or the trending piece, thank you for speaking the truth, many of them said. So we are moving into the Q&A. These chats are fast. We're getting all the information quick, so we are not lagging for hours, because we had a couple of those a couple of weeks ago where we had 600 people and we spent I don't know how many hours listening to everyone for other topic that we were discussing. But now I know our representative is about to jump into our airplane and she's at the airport. And this is the time where we want to make sure that you guys are asking questions. So as we mentioned before, if you want to participate, please raise your hand on the camera or raise your hand the emoji and or the icon in the bottom for the chat. And then I'm going to be able to see if you want to ask any questions. So this is the moment. We're going to have around 7 minutes for questions. So if anyone has a question, this is your opportunity to get any answers, either from our representative, from Ms. Jensen, or from our parent, Lindsay. I have one person. Let me see. Dory. Oh, hey, Dory. Welcome. You could unmute yourself.
Hey, hi, John. Good
Hey,
to see
Dory.
you again.
Nice seeing you
Thanks
again.
as always for hosting this. Miss Bartleman, I've met you before. I don't know if you remember me. My name is Dory White. I've been teaching 33 years in Broward County. Thank you so much for filing this bill and getting behind it. I would like to ask, realistically, what's the timeline on it? Because we're already getting into what they call crunch time each year. And it would be lovely to just avoid all of that stress on our kids. I would hate for us to do all of that prep, and then at the last possible minute, then they say, oh, it's okay. You don't really have to deal with this.
Well, unfortunately, I have to move on the legislature's timeline. I have 4 committees I have to get through. It would not get signed into law until July. But actually, that's not true. Let me backtrack. First of all, if they wanted to, if we passed it the first day of session, it could be signed into law by the governor. Worst case, it has to go through the whole session until it gets signed into law. But what I'm hoping is, look, this is, while I was listening to everyone, a text came through that Colorado, a school board, voted to cancel their high stakes testing. I'm hoping that this is going to spark the conversation, and the governor and the Commissioner of Education will take notice, and we'll do this. Look, it's not until after June anyway that you get the results, and it's what they do with the results is the problem, from performance pay, from retention to grading a whole school and a whole community on one high stakes test. So my goal is to prevent all of those things. And the important thing that was discussed here is that, remember that when you with the Florida accountability system, when you don't make the grade, you go into turnaround. I mean, there are penalties for those schools. That's how it works. So I'm trying to avoid all of those things and just have the teachers use data that they're collecting, other data to drive instruction. And I know there are a lot of kids that are not where they should be. We have a lot of great parents out there who are working with their kids at home, but we have other parents who are working 2 or 3 jobs. And it's very difficult for them. And that they had the most difficult time during virtual learning because they weren't there to sit in front of the computer. There were kids sitting in front of a computer with their older brother and sister sitting in front of their class. So it's just, I hope that this is, to me, so common sense. It's such a no-brainer, right? Like, an educator, this would not be the year. So I'm hoping that we're getting a lot of press. I was interviewed by a news station in Tampa. I was interviewed by Politico. I'm hoping that, everyone will see this and say, this is ridiculous, state of Florida. Let's stop this now. That's my goal. If not, I'm prepared to go through the process with my bill. But I'm really hoping that this starts the conversation at the state level, because this is totally within their purview to provide our families and students and teachers relief right now. They can make an announcement tomorrow to do this.
Absolutely.
Thank
Well,
you.
I appreciate that response. And Rosemary, I just want to also thank you because I completely share your point of view. My personal belief about testing is that it should all completely go away. It has taken a hold of our system and just completely destroyed what every teacher goes into the profession to do, which is to teach our kids what they need to know, not what somebody else has decided that they need to know. And what I'd like to ask you, Rosemary, if I could, is can a parent just opt out and say, I just don't want my child to take the test and I want the school to use the grades that they're earning? Does it have to be a portfolio as an alternative? You're muted. You're muted.
Oh, okay, am I muted? Okay,
Yep,
am I
there you
muted?
are. There you
Okay, they always gave, I mean, in high school and middle school, they can use just the grades. It's really in elementary where you need to have a portfolio. But in middle school and high school, that was always my, go-to. When I walked in, I'm like, you have his grades. You see what he's doing. You can't, how
Yeah.
can you fail a kid with straight A's?
Well, that's what I've never understood, how one test on one day somehow erased the 10 months, not just of learning they've done with their teacher, but the relationship that that teacher has developed with the child to understand how they work, what their learning style is, what makes them encouraged to do something, what discourages them from doing something. So I've just always been baffled by the whole testing movement and the accountability movement. I mean, of course, it bothers me as a teacher how they want to hold us accountable for everything, but more importantly on those kids. And it's just taken us in the direction away from what pure learning should be.
And again, that to me, that was the goal from the get-go. It's really about taking all kinds of autonomy away from classroom teachers to the point where I see what I see now. I mean, honestly, at this point in my life, I thought I'd be going back. I loved teaching K1 and I love teaching kids to read and think and enumerate and write. But the way it looks now, that's not developmentally appropriate and it's not good for kids. And what I'm seeing happen as a result of what is this? It's been like 20 years of this now, is teachers who really don't know how to think, how to be autonomous, how to create curriculum or craft curriculum, because it's all very narrowly focused on making sure these kids pass that test. And so that third grade bar has just pushed the curriculum down to that kindergarten looks like second grade, it looks like, and that to me that was the impetus for me to, get into the opt-out movement, was to first deny them the data. That was before my son even came up against that third grade thing. I just saw it as a teacher. I wasn't even in the classroom, but my teacher friends, colleagues would call me and say, you need to call downtown. They're removing the stoves from the kindergarten. You need to blah, blah, blah. They're taking all our blocks and our kitchens away. I'm like, what is going on? So I see it as there's a bigger picture on top of that, but you're right. How can one FSA keep a child from not graduating, when they've taken all the courses that the state has told them to take and they've passed them? I don't get it.
Well, yeah, and that developmentally appropriate piece is so critical, because I agree. I teach math, and what I teach an 8th grader now is what we used to have to teach a 10th grader.
Right.
And it's not like brain development has suddenly increased at a more rapid rate in the last decade or 20 or even 50 years. That's biological. You can't control that or change it.
Yeah, I mean, kindergarten kids really do still need to rest. Whether people like that or not, they really do need to nap.
And learn how to share.
So yeah, so watching that, but like I said, watching if I would have allowed the state to do what it does with these tests to my son, my son may not have graduated if I would have let him take that 10th grade FSA. And here he is, he's a junior in college. He took every calculus class they offer in college, and he's doing great. So, the problem is we don't have teachers or educators anymore making these decisions for educators. We have politicians who have a different viewpoint of education. that are running these things. And I think, on this bill, to me, the other bill that's very concerning is the SB 48, where they're just lumping all the vouchers into one big ESA. And that's a little scary because that's going to pull more money from our public schools. So I'm going to put some people in the chat that you guys should follow, just who writes about the testing and opting out, and also about all this other stuff that's going on in the state. If you really want to know who the movers and shakers are in like destroying public education, or who are fighting for it, this would be your blog. So
well, let me transition to listen to, and thank you, Dory, for your question and the conversation. Ms. Bartleman, you had a comment, and then I'm going to just walk everyone through the process of checking who are the chairs, how you could get in touch with them, and try to email them or call them. Same thing with our school board. Go ahead.
Well, I wanted to point out two things. Number one, high school students, not in a typical year without COVID, the only test that matters to them to get into college is the ACT and SAT. The state allows the use of concordant scores for the purposes of graduation requirements. So why are we investing money in an FSA? You have to ask yourself that question, number one. Number two, all the voucher programs, all the voucher money, all the voucher schools, they're not accountable for any of this. They don't have to take the FSA. Their schools aren't graded. They don't even check to see if they have degree teachers in the classrooms. So I just want to point that out. So when you're, just some speaking points for you when you're talking about the voucher bill, like this is, the FSA is the end all be all, and all this accountability system is the end all be all, that we're going to administer it and use it punitively in a year of a worldwide pandemic. But by the way, the voucher kids don't have to deal with any of this. Only the public school kids and the charter school kids.
Correct. And that is the one of the biggest things, right? When we talk about equity, access, inclusion in our schools, in our public schools, we are generating so much inequalities within our system based on a test. And we know that schools get closed, and what the representative was mentioning about closing schools or getting into this list or blacklisted because they didn't have the high scores in the region. Parents and communities not being informed like tonight about what are their options in order to move forward if they don't want to have their kids taking a test, either on 3rd grade or in 10th grade. And exactly what the representative just mentioned, which is our kids don't need